Good day, everyone. I have pleasure of warmly welcoming all of you. As many of you probably know, our organization was founded in 1996 by a group of idealistic young people with a mission to promote democratic participation of youth and educate future political young leaders about of necessity of Serbian Euro-Atlantic integration. In the first decade of our activities, we were optimistic that our goal could be achieved soon, but however, the narrative in Serbia changed and the Euroscepticism became dominant, make it almost taboo to speak about Serbian path to NATO. Recent research has shown us that majority of Serbia's youth are against Euro-Atlantic integration. Here, our task is to analyze the negative influence of Russian fake news on forming objective opinions and the viewpoint on Serbian Euro-Atlantic integrations. Today, we have gathered here a panel of prominent experts to discuss what's in fact is effect and how to solve Russian influence on Serbian youth. Firstly, I would like to introduce Ms. Barbora Maronkova. She's from NATO PTD. She will be a voice of NATO here in our panel. Also, we have Mr. Zsolt Rabai. He's Senior Vice President of International Center for Development and Democratic Transition. Also here with us, we have Ms. Natasha Kilibarda. She is a science writer and communicator. Mr. Nikola Burazer, Program Director, Center of Contemporary Politics, Executive Editor, European Western Balkans. Dr. Stefan Janic, Editor-in-Chief, Fake News Tracker. Dr. Igor Novakovic, the Research Director of International and Security Affairs Center. My longtime co-activist, Ms. Anja Stanisic, Communication and Marketing Consultant, will moderate this discussion. I hope that everyone will find this discussion both valuable and educational. Anja, you have a stage.
Thank you. And the idea is for everyone to start with a 5 to 10 minute introduction, like speech or lecture, or how we're going to call it, and then to have a discussion after that. So first, we can start, if it is okay with all of you, with Ms. Barbora Maronkova. Would you like to share your view on this topic particularly?
Yes, sure. So good morning, everyone, and pleasure to see some old faces again. It's been a while since I last saw some of you. I was the public diplomacy NATO officer for Western Balkans for almost 10 years, I believe. Then I switched to, NATO press office. Then I went to Ukraine. I was the director of NATO Information Documentation Center there for 3.5 years. Then I worked at the policy planning unit here at the NATO headquarters on our latest strategic concept from 2022. And now I'm dealing with what we call global partners. So these are all the countries in the Indo-Pacific and beyond. And this is an agenda very dear to Zsolt's heart because he was the one who started it many years ago. So I'm basically following Zsolt's footsteps, both as the Western Balkans officer and as the Indo-Pacific officer. Zsolt, I mean, there is some special connection there, Slovak, Hungarian, there you go. Anyway, jokes aside, this is obviously always a very interesting topic. topic. And as you can imagine, having spent 3.5 years in Ukraine, and not only did we talk a lot about disinformation there, but me and my office ourselves became targets of the Russian disinformation. So I know very well what it means, just not in a theoretical way, but also in a personal way. Look, I mean, NATO as an institution, I might spend a few minutes just to outline maybe the more official NATO view and line. And then, of course, in the Q&A, I'm happy to share maybe more personal stories and experiences. For NATO as an alliance, which for many is connected with wars, with military operations, I mean, being a target of subversion and hostile actions is, I would say, part of its DNA and part of its business. While the old methods have definitely not disappeared from the Cold War and the Soviet days, we see a greater sophistication today, intensity, and the scale of hybrid activities, including disinformation. Why I say hybrid activities first, because we consider the disinformation to be part of a bigger package that the adversaries are using against us, and that's a toolbox of the hybrid threats. So already at the Warsaw Summit in 2016, we adopted our own counter-hybrid threat strategy as NATO. So we identified what we consider as hybrid threats, what is part of the hybrid threats toolbox, and how can we as NATO counter it in a proactive way, and disinformation being one of them. These days, we are more and more discussing inside NATO and with our member states and partner countries that we should probably switch to a little bit broader term again, not just disinformation, but to frame it as foreign interference and malign influence strategy. Why is this important? Because the disinformation that is used and adopted and targeted at us and our societies, or in this case, my organization, is not just for the sake of having fun or for the sake of doing something malicious to NATO. It's part of a broader strategy of foreign influence and subversion on behalf of whatever adversary it is. So I think this also helps us then when we talk, because we have spent, and I'm sure you as well, we have spent many years, almost a decade now, talking about disinformation and how is it created and what tools this is being used and how people consume information. But I think we also have to understand that this is part of something bigger. Of our adversaries, and it's combined with other tools that are part of this foreign interference. And why do we need to understand this? Because all these actions are targeted against us. They seek to undermine our institutions, our values, for NATO, of course, the cohesion and unity of NATO. And nowhere is this better seen than in our support to Ukraine, and the same goes for the European Union. So what we consider important from the organizational perspective, in a sense, okay, so what are we going to do about this? We firstly recognize that we need a fact-based and credible and proactive communication to tell our story. This is the basis. We also found out over the years that we cannot do it alone for different reasons, and that we need partners, and internal coordination is very important, be it institutional partners, so particularly the European Union, with whom we have very good collaboration, especially with the colleagues at the External Action Service. And the reason why I'm speaking to you today and not one of my colleagues who are dealing with this topic directly is that they're all today at the meeting with our EU colleagues and with the G20 Rapid Response Mechanism group. So they have a meeting today in Brussels. But we also work a lot and have worked a lot with civil society grassroots organizations and debunking organizations, but also tech. We cannot do this without the tech companies, quite honestly. So creating this network of partners, whether they are from private sector or institutional or civil society, is in our view also a second most important thing, how to address this issue, because no one can do it on their own. And the third thing I would say is that it's about internal coordination. Of course, it's about proactive and fact-based communication, and then we can discuss how to do it in a most creative way. You talked about young people. So, digging into the data of whether the young people get their information, what kind of narratives work for them, what kind of visuals and images work for them. So this is very much using the techniques of the marketing and the private sector. So if they can help us to create some really good, credible campaigns, let's call it, from the PR perspective, then that's extremely helpful. I don't think we are going to dissuade young people from this information by having a conference, in my humble opinion. And the last thing, perhaps I would say, from NATO's perspective, which we have invested quite a bit of time and money in building, is understanding the greater information space in which we all are operating, because we understand that more and more there is not just a certain country or a certain adversary sowing disinformation. Now the disinformation in the ecosystem gets really built up and works from each other. And this we have observed in particularly in how Russia and China have been aligning their narratives. Whether it's blaming NATO for the war in Ukraine, whether it's falsely claiming that with our partnerships in the Indo-Pacific, NATO is moving to Asia, or whatever else it is. So not just the Russian propaganda, but we are more and more starting to be confronted by the Chinese hostile narratives, which are very often interlinked with Russia's, or they copy each other, or they feed off each other. And I think this opens yet another front in this area. So I think I'm going to stop here just to kick us off, and I'm happy to brainstorm with you further throughout the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your views. And I would like to continue with Mr. Rabay. Can you share your point of view with us?
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, I'm a former Hungarian diplomat. I've worked also as foreign policy advisor to the Hungarian president, then for almost 2 decades in NATO PDD. For a while, I was the Secretary General of the Atlantic Treaty Association, and now working as Vice President of ICDT. So I am also from Central Europe. So I think that with Barbara, we can not only know the issues that concern Serbia and the Western Balkans, but we can feel. That was always my opinion, that it is not enough to analyze on a scientific basis the facts, but you have to feel a little bit the psychology of people and of the different nations if you want to understand the processes that are going on. We are talking a lot about fake news already since ages. And we are looking for some miraculous medication against it, but I don't think there is really miraculous medication. Already in 2015, an Italian expert, Giorgio Bertolin, said that the new Russian propaganda entertains, confuses, and overwhelms audience. And I think that the 3 factors are quite important. And today, if we look at the Russian aims, according to my feeling, it is more to make people uncertain than to convince people. So practically, this is provoking uncertainty. This is provoking a kind of mistrust. And it coincides very well what Barbara said, that there is an aim to undermine the credibility of the Western institutions and of the democratic systems. And I think that they are pretty successful with it. Today, I'm pretty sure this is the same in Serbia as well, because when I worked with Serbia, that was already present, the relativism of facts. And people really do not think that there are trustful sources or there are facts. It depends on who is telling you and what they are telling to you. So it depends on who is presenting it. Today, I have a feeling that people do not trust traditional media, and they tend to believe to news that pretend to discover the hidden secret truths, what is behind the different events that is presented in different media outlets. So, those information sources are definitely, when they are talking about conspiracy theories or whatever, I mean, they are definitely much more interesting. This is really something, plus gives you the feeling that revelation, I know, and that is, I felt something didn't go correctly, and now I understand what's going on. Quite interesting. This is concerning. I will tell you a few data about Hungary, because I think that in mass psychology, the audience in Hungary is pretty close to what we can witness in Serbia. Now, recently there was a Reuters Institute research in some 46 countries, and concerning to Hungary, they discovered that only 25% of people trust the media, which is a very low number. Another institute did a search concerning the impact of the Hungarian media, and they could realize that practically most of the people consider that the Hungarian media is not objective. And even half of the governing parties' electors consider that the official media is biased towards the government. So what does it mean? Obviously, they do not trust that what they read, what they see is really the fact, is really the truth. What's going on? Some people who have the opportunity, who have language skills and so on, they try to find different information sources, and obviously they find a very different presentation of the facts. But on one hand, you can say, yeah, it's good. Yeah, but on the other hand, it confirms the relative truth. Oh, yes, this is an American source. Obviously, they are lying on their behalf. Oh, this is Russia. Obviously, they are lying because they want to support their truth. So I think that one of the most critical issue that we have to fight today is the relative truth. Political Capital Hungarian Research Institute did some search recently, and they discovered that 76% of people in Hungary, and I'm talking about Hungary, but I think that it's pretty much relevant to Serbia as well, agree that what is presented as facts are actually only those are not reflecting the truth. Some 59% believes that the objective reality doesn't exist. Only opinions. So what you can hear in media, those are only opinions. Now, this is a fertile field for conspiracy theories. And at the beginning, I wanted really to draw the attention on this phenomenon, the relative truth. And today, even those who are looking for different information sources, they might not believe that they can really find, they try to find the truth in between the lines, and they believe that there is no reliable, objective information source. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. This is amazing intro for our guest next speaker, and that is Natasha Kiliber. That's digital forensics. You're doing the digital forensics, and you're doing like what we say debunking news. So we would like to hear your point of view on, is there like a relative truth or is there an absolute truth?
Well, I should set the context first, maybe, for some of the stuff being said, or should be.
Just a second. I have to check. Do you hear Natasha and do you see Natasha? And that is the question for a tech crew also, because I don't see the.
Does the all.
We can cut this in the editing, but yeah, I see the camera moving, but I don't think it's targeting this. You can hear Natasha, right?
Do you hear me? Are you?
No. Can you?
Can I speak?
You can speak. It's just
Okay.
you can be a little louder.
Okay, I should be louder. Okay. As I said, the context first, maybe. So we are talking about disinformation, but that should be considered as maybe a huge part of the Russian influence or Russophile influence or propaganda, as we maybe should say in the beginning. And first of all, there's a lot of two part of this this issue. There's an anti that is pro-Russian and anti-Western, that they are connected, but for the most of the part they're actually pretty diverse. But they rely on each other, but they're pretty they can be pretty different. So that is the context for our talk in the hour or two next. As an open source intelligence researcher and digital forensics investigator, I have been involved in verification of maybe up to 100 footage, audio, photo, and video footage from the Ukraine from the start from 24 February of 2022 up to now. We are now in Israel-Hamas war, but that war is still
Very much
there. Yeah, so we can have, is there absolute or relative truth? Yeah, that is the question. What we have, I can see the pattern, maybe a few regularities, maybe in the disinformation patterns, maybe. And maybe I can just say what I doing my work, what I have found, maybe. That there are a few regularities, but they all have their main goal, and main goal is to just mud the water, and then your question really has the point. What is the relative and what's the absolute truth? What is the truth in the first place? And what maybe Stefan can, from his point of view and his fact-checking work, can actually seal that the mass production of not just fake news, that is disinformation, out of context, photo, audio, old news, which is presented in the context of Russian-Ukrainian war. So that is pretty easy to create and distribute. Pretty easy. They just find some old photo or video from some other time and maybe other war and present it as there is happening right now in Ukraine somewhere. But what is actually pretty important for me to say is that when that is created, but every fact checker, every digital forensics investigator has to verify that. And that takes time. For something that is created in a minute or two, we have to verify and write a fact check text and distribute it. So just as fake news or every other disinformation is created, the demanti of that actually doesn't have the influence as a fake news as it is. There is one pattern, and it's pretty easy to distribute. The other side is that anti-Western. To present in Serbia, we are fertile ground for it. We should recognize the elephant in the room that even though even a quarter of a decade this has passed, NATO bombing still has a fresh wound in a lot of Serbian people. No, maybe not in the youth, but a lot of people in Serbia still has that recollection of NATO bombing. So that anti-Western type of narrative has a is pretty much strong right now. Maybe not in that strictly direct narrative, but we can see it right now with the, as Miloš has said, research has shown that youth has not been interested in EU integrations. Even Serta's research from March this year said that very same stuff. I think that I don't know if Miloš has been referencing to National Council of Youth of Serbia, research from 2019, I think, but that is very much true. Youth is not very interested for many reasons of EU or any other pro-Western type of integration or political, strategic, whatever cooperation.
Sorry for interfering, but I just wanna say something very absurd. They're not into EU integration or NATO integration, but when they consider like relocating and when they consider like they would like to move somewhere and start a new life, that is never like I'm gonna go to Russia and start a new life there, but I'm gonna go in some of the EU countries or some of the NATO countries.
Well, that is interesting because there could be there is a part of some maybe other discussion. They're not even interested in politics, or they're just interested in building some other their life there. There is, but the stuff we are seeing here is they don't just care. They don't want to go to the elections even. So yeah, I know we are gonna. Yes, and I want to just point this out before other participants take this. With all, even there, maybe we should discuss about the Russian influence or influence of Russian propaganda, or is just, or if this is just a sentiment we are having here. We are the myth of Russian friends or brothers. Yeah, that is a myth, but nobody actually talks about it. And why is that has started in the first place? But public's attention is a very valuable currency, and as that attention with that currency, there's a pretty fertile ground for other types of manipulation, and I think that is the main concern here. That attention, public's attention as a currency is something that is being manipulated and used for whatever type of influence or propaganda or whatever narrative they want to say that, and to very least.
Stefan, as Natasha already announced you, so we can continue with you and your point of view on this topic.
Should I look to the camera?
You can just,
okay.
however you feel.
It will be a little bit unnatural to look like this because
We are here.
Okay. So I work as an editor-in-chief of Fake News Tragač or Fake News Tracker. That is a fact-checking website based here in Novi Sad, but we are covering all the topics related to this region. And I would say from my experience, and we are mainly dealing with mainstream media outlets in Serbia, that people usually have unrealistic hopes when it comes to fact checking. For example, that you can take Informer, that is a daily paper with a high circulation, or that you can take Alo, and that you will find a bunch of disinformation in one issue. It is not possible. I would say that around like 1 or 2% of their total content is could be labeled as disinformation, and other things are something in between. Of course, you can see a lot of propaganda, you can see a lot of bullshit, you can see data distortion, etc. But they are getting more and more careful. A few years ago, we established a special award. It's like a golden, bronze, and silver Pinocchio for those media outlets from Serbia who are publishing the largest number of disinformation. And we printed, like with 3D printer, those small statues, and we were sending them to those media outlets all together with a code of ethics, hoping that they can change something in their policies, that they can.
Sorry. Who won?
Mostly Informer, Alo, and Kurir.
Okay.
Yeah, and nothing was happening for years. It was just like a joke. We were getting the good media coverage because it's fun. Yeah. And then we were invited by Kurir. They
They
wanted.
actually have a manager for ethics.
They have a manager for ethics. Yes.
Did it change anything? I just have to.
A little bit when it comes to reporting on crimes or sensitive issues. So according to official statistics of press council, they are getting better and better. There are still some serious issues, but yeah. I'm mostly focused on disinformation, not on the whole ethical point of view. And they invited us, so we met with them, and they had all those Pinocchios in their newsroom, and they said that they decided to remove all the content that we labeled as false. And they did that. Not just that they removed it from their website, but they apologized. And it's currently on their, not just on Kurir's website, but also Mondo, Espresso. So whole media group is trying to change something. Why? I don't think that they. I mean, it's a good intention, and I see that we helped in that process. But I would say they don't care about ethics that much. They are just aware of meta programs, meta third partnership programs with different fact checkers from the region. So if something is labeled as false by independent fact checkers, it's getting less views, it's blurred, it's labeled as disinformation. And that's why they are starting losing money, losing people who are following their content.
It's always tracking the money.
Yes.
On Facebook and Instagram.
Yes. But I really appreciate the way they removed all the content, they published their corrections. But when it comes to pro-Russian narratives, I would say we have a similar picture. It is really hard to find a pro-Russian narrative that is based on a lie that is easily fact-checkable. So you can take a single report, or you can do easy photo and video forensics, and everything's clear. So there is a lie. They're using different tactics. They're using different strategies. They're using a lot of filtering. They're using a lot of bullshit. They're promoting their point of view, and they're using propaganda, but not in a way they used it a few years ago. So they are becoming more careful, and I think that even their young journalists within those newsrooms who they have to publish like 100 pieces of news daily, which is insane. They are getting more and more careful. And then one additional thing that protects them is they function as one integrated newsroom. So you will see a lot of copy-paste journalism. If you are doing media monitoring every single day, you will see that the content is basically the same on the most popular websites, tabloid websites in Serbia.
Just to highlight a little bit.
Just the headline, that is space for creativity. They are adding something or, emphasizing something that is interesting to them. But usually it's very, very hard to find a piece of information that is completely false. And that is something that is changing. They are changing it because they would like to be present on social networks. But these trends are still ongoing and changing. visited the Facebook page of The Guardian. It has more than 8 million followers, but majority of their posts on Facebook is liked by less than 50 people.
Yeah.
So if you don't pay, you will not be visible anymore on Facebook and Instagram. Twitter is a little bit different, but I would say that even those Facebook policies, even that kind of fact-checking partnership with independent fact-checkers around Europe is not, it was a good idea, but it doesn't have a large impact right now because you will not be visible if you don't pay for your content to be visible.
It used to be like Facebook was the main point of, information distribution. I think now it has become a Twitter or X platform where everything starts, like where every chat starts and then it spreads to traditional media. Is that the?
Yeah, and we have chat apps, and
library.
and some of those groups are closed, so we can approach, of course, mainstream media and social networks, but those closed groups is something that is, I would say, really dangerous. We should find new strategies, to find out what is going on within those groups.
We can infiltrate what they.
Yes.
Yeah, not to influence. So we're switching to my left. Hello, Nicola. We would like to hear also your opinion on this topic.
Yeah, well, I will definitely say that disinformation is a major issue in Serbia and the entire Western Balkans, even though the context, I would say, is a bit different in the Western Balkans than the European Union. First of all, as my fellow panelists here have already said, it is not so much a problem of fake news or outright disinformation. It is more a question of narratives which are spread by different media outlets. But let's not forget, it's not only the media doing that in our region, it's the government themselves. And this is the main difference when it comes to the context. Because the main, let's say, discourse on disinformation in the European Union, in the West, is that you have governments who are trying to prevent fake news and disinformation coming from external actors. In the Western Balkans, we actually have the governments themselves, which are quite often promoting fake news and propaganda because it serves their political interests. Not the governments, but political actors from the region. So be it the governments, be it the opposition political party in some countries, they're the ones who are actually spreading information, who are using media as political tools. And in that sense, spreading fake news kind of became like a legitimate instrument of political struggle in the Western Balkans. And this would be the case even if there were no external actors at all. Even if there was no external influence at all, we would still have the same problem, but maybe it would look a bit different. When it comes to external disinformation, let's say pro-Russian disinformation, which is our main topic here, it is definitely very strong in Serbia. You definitely do have lots of pro-Russian disinformation, all of these narratives which are primarily anti-Western, and then only incidentally praising Russia and promoting Russia's viewpoints. But this influence is, I would say, not so much Russian as actually coming again from domestic actors, from domestic political actors, from domestic media, which have an interest in spreading pro-Russian propaganda. Of course, you do have Russian media influence in the region. You have, in Serbia in particular, you have Sputnik Serbia, which is influential not only in Serbia, but the entire region. You have RT Balkans, once again, based in Serbia. So you do have some kind of attempts by Russia to directly influence discourse. You also have a whole media ecosystem of this kind of unregistered media portals or far-right media portals who are quite clearly influenced by Russia or which are quoting Russian sources directly. But this is not the main problem we have. It's only one part of the problem. Main problem we have in Serbia are actually the pro-government media, be it the tabloids, be it pro-government television stations, which have a much stronger outreach than these, let's say, marginal, web portals or even Sputnik itself. And these media are spreading anti-Western and pro-Russian narratives, not only in Serbia, but also the entire region because of linguistic similarities and because many citizens of the Western Balkans are actually reading Serbian media Also, Serbian media are not under sanctions. So, for example, in these countries in the Western Balkans and also in the EU, where these Russian media are, blocked, you actually have access to Serbian media, which are spreading very direct Russian propaganda, sometimes even more direct, and sometimes even worse than the one coming from Sputnik or RT. So this is something that is definitely the issue, but as I said earlier, the whole context is different. So we have the governments who are actually quite often spreading propaganda, allowing it because they have some kind of an interest. In that sense, how to counter this, I would say, is a bit different than in the EU, meaning that fighting disinformation on social networks or through fact checking is, I would say, quite a useful, tool. I think it has to be done. But our main problem is the lack of media freedom and the system of media capture we have in place. And this is that simply that, the Serbian government is quite influential in the media sector. It controls many media outlets. It manages to basically dominate and create, discourses that are going to be prevailing in the media. And this sort of control basically makes, all other attempts, to fight disinformation without tackling the issue of media capture completely, meaningless unless this is tackled as well. And this is something that I believe has to be in the focus of everyone who is trying to create some kind of strategies, how to counter disinformation in the Western Balkans, in Serbia in particular. Because first of all, the governments are not your allies. Serbian government is not your ally. If you're fighting disinformation, they're going to often be the one that you're going to fact check and you are going to analyze, when it comes to disinformation sources. And this is definitely, I would say, is a big difference in context. And then again, you are tackling only marginal issues, and you're able to only tackle relatively small problems and not tackle the elephant in the room, unless you're talking about the problem of media capture. And I think the European Union, who is, I would say, actively fighting disinformation in the region, and who also is, let's say, engaging with the Serbian government and other governments in the region in terms of comes to media freedom and disinformation, they need to be taking a closer look at this particular issue and basically work on helping, let's say, decapture Serbian media, promote certain standards in reporting, helping improve media literacy, and these are kind of things that I think would have to be done here to combat disinformation.
Yeah, we will talk more about that after. So we want to close this first circle with you, Igor, and your point of view.
Well, the topic here is also disinformation in the young people, and the question is why young people are so open to receiving this kind of news. And I think that, part of it can be explained by, inherent characteristics of the youth, but also there are specific elements in our situation that can explain. First and foremost, of course, young people are rebellious. They do not like dominant narratives, and they are searching for alternatives underneath. So for them, for example, the process of the EU integration, cooperation with NATO, is something that is also. So we are in this process for 20 years, and nothing happens. So for them, this is the objective reality, and they are searching for something, under quotes, better, not realizing that the alternatives that are coming from the other side are either not realistic, in a sense that they cannot materialize, or they are not that what they proclaim to be, right? Also, the problem there, and several of our panelists already mentioned that simply put, first, young people either do not understand that there are standards for functioning of media, so what standards media should follow, or they are simply, there is media capture, and they act it as a fact. I mean, not knowing that there is a capture, but they accept it as a normal functioning of things. Third element is that the processes pushed by the West simply take too long. I mean, as I said before,
Why is that? Sorry.
sorry.
Why did it take so long?
Well, I want to tackle that afterwards, but first and foremost, we have unsolved issues in the region. Maybe for some of the Western countries, they are solved regarding, for example, Bosnia, Kosovo. But the thing is that still these issues are creating rough debates in the region. They are potentially creating conflicts, and obviously this has to be tackled in some way. You cannot just put it under the rug. So while you have these issues, nationalistic elites will, use it as the most opportune way to collect votes. Yes, and also this is undermining the processes of the integration. Second thing, of course, is that if we observe the previous processes of the EU integration from 1995 onwards, in each and every case, we had a strong push coming from the West regarding integration. In some cases, we even have dates for the accession, like in 2004 and 2007 enlargements. In the case of Croatia, we had a heavy push coming from Germany. Here, we have indicative dates. Nobody wants to put their hand in the fire and say, okay, this is the moment when we want to see Western Balkans integrated. And this could create, of course, the push, and the local demand. So if you say, we want to see Western Balkans then, and these are criteria, but we are firmly behind this date, then this could create a domestic push and the demand. And of course, it can create a political force that will then push these processes. But to go back to what I was saying, so the process goes too long, and sometimes the EU is too complicated. So it's not really easy to explain what is the value in the EU when there is too many bureaucracy. And we have heard politicians in the past, in Serbia, but elsewhere, they're trying to narrow the EU to several simple single issues. For example, we will get money, we will get freedom of movement, we will get this or that. But the true element, the real values of the EU are sometimes too complicated to explain. And on the other hand, it's relatively easy to create a counter narrative on how to demonize the EU. For example, and the most stupid one, you will not be able to slaughter your animals.
Yeah, and make your own tortilla in the background.
Yeah, I seen it yesterday again, and actually, on some Facebook group, and people were from Hungary, actually, and from Romania and Croatia were debacking that, but by saying we have the right to do this. Also, of course, in case of Serbia, why we are so open to this information is, of course, this inherent feeling that we are something else. So, this is not strictly characteristics for Serbia. A number of countries, also feel themselves in between the West and the East. But here, I think because of the unsolved issues, because of the legacy of wars, it has a particular dimension to it. Of course, somebody also mentioned we have this here also algorithms that are targeting people. And last but not least, I mentioned, and Nicole also mentioned this, the government is the key in the media capture, because they are the ones that are ruining, actually allowing that there is no standards in the media, and that there is so much disinformation. And lastly, the problem is, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, the media were, you knew when some media is publishing something that is, adhering to certain standards. Now, for example, to my opinion, the most objective media in the country are several political weeklies. They always, Vreme, Novi Magazine, NIN, but their circulation is so small and so limited that, you know, they
They're
can,
constantly on the verge of like
yeah.
being shut down, yeah.
And on the other hand, and for the young people, probably these media are not really important. For them is something that is, you know, quick and fast. And usually there what we have, I mean, I'm not a media expert, but, you know, I was recently analyzing the writings of Kurik and Informer. It was really interesting because in most of cases, what I saw is that the actual news is more or less okay.
Yeah, the initial information is always
It's
good.
agency. No, it's in many cases it's agency news. For example, coming from Beta or, you know, a regular source. But then you have a clickbait article, which is actually the one. This is the thing that creates disinformation. I mean, and even the simplest things. I mean, weather forecast. Now we have this, you know, over the weekend, this sudden change of weather in Serbia. So we had how many? 20 degrees on Friday, on Sunday, and then, you know, you actually know what the online version. So there is a completely regular article about that, quoting meteorologists who were discussing that, but then the article, Arctic chaos is coming
Yeah,
is coming to Serbia.
I know
Yeah.
which you're referencing, even the meteorologist, which is, and it is not even a meteorologist, I know who that is. And even the research is that is the part of the problem. They are not contacting the persons who are actually relevant to that. Just adding to your point.
It's
Yeah.
better to have a debate. So and also I want to go back to things related why regarding the captured media and why the government is doing what they're doing, at least in my opinion. First and foremost, we have this omnipresent issue of Kosovo, which was actually the major characteristics of the rule of this ruling elite since 2012. All the time, this was the topic. So there was a need, to suppress challenges related to this issue. Second thing is, and in connection to the first one, is that in my mind, the main danger to this ruling elite does not come from the pro-European parties, but from the right. Because if there is an effective alternative on the right, that can undermine the foundations of this ruling elite. So, by spreading pro-Russian, allowing spreading pro-Russian news, pro-Russian disinformation, you're actually neutralizing, a counter pro-Russian narrative that would be also anti-governmental. And, we saw this, if you observe it, pro-Russian narratives in pro-governmental tabloids and in media, they are never critical about the ruling elite. You can never find that. And, on Sputnik and on RT Balkans, but, RT Balkans just was established last year, right?
Yeah.
So on Sputnik mainly, before invasion on Ukraine in 2022, you could find quite a few critical texts and information regarding the ruling elite in Serbia. I mean, for example, when Mr. Rogozin, who was then vice president of government in 2016, I think he visited Serbia, after the famous press conference when he presented the S-300 model, he went to Sputnik, and then he gave an extensive interview there, which was broadcasted via their website, and it could be found, and it can be found now on the internet, on YouTube. But in this interview, he was highly critical regarding the positions of the Serbian ruling elite. And this is something interesting. So these programmatic tabloids are actually cleaning also all the criticism that can, come from Moscow. And also, we did a research years ago. I think it was in 2020. We did a mapping of Serbian Facebook with the help of the AI algorithm. Actually, we were a part of a larger project. And what we found out that there are on Facebook, that there are direct connections of Russian sources, such as RIA Novosti, Sputnik, and others, with the right-wing fringe media, gray zone that Nicola mentioned. So they are directly copy-pasting or republishing news coming from Russia. But there is no direct connection between the pro-governmental media and the Russian sources. So this tells me actually that our media, when they are doing something with the content that is created in Russia, they're refabricating it, they're cleaning it and making it purposeful for their own ends, and not, so they're not simply fulfilling these information are not simply fulfilling the task that was for which they were originally produced.
So Nicola, I would like to go back to Barbara, because Nicola said that the government is actually, Serbian government should be fact-checked. So that is what I would like to do now, because in Serbian media, there is almost no more mentions of NATO, and there is absolutely no mentions that I've seen about cooperation between NATO and Serbia and Serbian government at this point. If they are, they're like very, very low. So I would like to ask you, is there a cooperation between Serbia and NATO right now? And after you, I would like also Igor to address this issue. Is there a cooperation between Serbia and NATO, and how far along with that are we?
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Look, I think the cooperation obviously is ongoing. The question is the intensity of the cooperation. And I think the visit of the NATO Secretary General to Serbia, what was it, 3 weeks ago now? I think was not only very timely, but also quite important to kick a little bit this into the higher gear. So we don't only talk about Serbia within the ongoing clashes in the northern Kosovo, so that we have a different story of what NATO does with Serbia, other than just always putting it into the frame of Serbia-Kosovo relations. That's my very personal opinion here. But the cooperation is ongoing. Even the exercises are ongoing, which I think is quite spectacular, despite the fact that Serbia is also exercising with its eastern partners, let me put it this way. And then, but of course, the intensity, I think, even if I compare with just, let's say, 10 years ago when I worked with your region, I think the level of cooperation is down. Why is that? I think there can be different diagnostics. Perhaps it's the tiredness of both sides. Perhaps is many other issues which started happening, particularly in the eastern border, and the attention was focused there. But at the same time, I think it's also the interest of the Serbian side, which clearly has gone down in the past couple of years. So that would be just my very kind of brushstroke view from someone who has worked with Serbia for many years, but has also been now following it rather from the sidelines. So I don't see personally that the relationship is gone the wrong way. It's just the intensity has, I think, sort of evaporated, and we would perhaps need some new momentum in it. And I think that's why the SecGen went to the regional tour. But if I may, I would just maybe go back to what some of you said earlier, and that was very fascinating for me about the media landscape and what's happening on that excuse me, media side. But correct me if I'm wrong, but young people, and I'm sure it's in Serbia as elsewhere, I don't think they're really reading any of these newspapers. Are they reading Courier? Do you have data whether they are following Courier? They're reading it? Or if not, then, why are we so worried about that? And shouldn't we work with the young people through the sources of information they're getting? and with my discussions of young people all over the world in the last couple of years, because I posed the same question to everyone, including my Slovak compatriots, and I'm not going to go into the details of what's happening in Slovakia now, but I can assure you it's not much fun, is that the young people tell me, yeah, but we don't care about the media. I'm like, okay, so where do you get information from? And they're like, oh, from the social media. I'm like, okay, that's great, but which social media? And they tell me, well, it's either Instagram or TikTok. So just curious there, sort of throwing it back at you, that sometimes I think we are so focused about the going into the media landscape, but I'm sometimes wondering if we are not on the wrong track, particularly towards young people. So just a question from my side. Thank you.
Regarding NATO first.
Yeah, or you can just, if anyone else
So-
that wants to
Maybe
add
I
something to Barbora's, then we
Maybe I
can go.
can add just for this last part of Barbora's question to us. Maybe young people don't read Burir on their portals, but they do follow them on social media, exactly on Instagram and TikTok. So that influence is there. And that they have podcasts and young people listen to podcasts, but especially TikTok and informative also.
What I think the
And
biggest
they're-
issue is that they don't read. That is
They
the
don't read,
thing.
they
They don't read news, like not just young people, but people in general don't read news. They just read the headline,
Yeah, the
the
headline.
titles, subtitles, and maybe if you have some like witty comment about it to add, that is it. And photo,
And screenshot.
and that is it. Usually it's spread via screenshots on social networks, and that is like their main
And they
source
know
of
it,
information.
and they
And that
know
is
it.
what we have to actually
Address, yeah.
tackle and address.
And that is actually in conformity with what I said, that the major problem that we have are, at least in my opinion, are these headlines. So regarding NATO, first and foremost, I would like to agree with Barbora, so that we have this cooperation a bit down, but this is actually the consequence of two events. One event are presidential elections in Belarus and the problems there, after which our Ministry of Defense proclaimed a one-year moratorium on military cooperation with the foreign partners. And we had the second moratorium that was proclaimed after the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. So this is the reason why this cooperation was down. Before that, it was, if compared with cooperation with, under quotes, Eastern partners, it was, I don't know, something 90% it was cooperation with NATO and NATO member states, and 10% was with Russia and Belarus back then. But now the situation has completely changed. First and foremost, I think that the landscape in geopolitical sense is different, and there is no chance, I think, that Serbia will be able to continue any kind of cooperation with Russia. I mean, there can be some intellectual change, let's put it like that. But for example, to have Slavic Brotherhood exercise as we had in 2019 in Serbia, it simply will not happen. Other problems, and I would strongly argue that it is in the interest of Serbia, and I think that also the present authorities recognize that is in the interest of Serbia to cooperate with NATO. But the major problem there is, how do you present this cooperation in public? So we had an extensive cooperation with NATO during the previous decade, but all the time what you could see in the media was, some painting of one rather black image. My theory there is that NATO, as also the EU, are sort of sitting ducks, in a sense that you can really easily criticize it, paint it black, and there will be no response. Nobody will come out and say, oh, you cannot do that. Please don't do that. Please, because they are all ignoring, because they also see that there is a number of pro-Western steps that were committed by the ruling elite, back in those years. But right now, I think that it should be also right time, for a reaction and say, if you are really interested in cooperation with us, then you should also promote it. I mean, and also now to go back to what I said at the beginning. So obviously the second moratorium is out, first with the Platinum Book exercise that we had this, I think it was in June. It's a traditional exercise that we are doing within the framework of Partnership for Peace with NATO. And now, especially after the visit of Jens Stoltenberg, I think it will continue, that this moratorium will be definitely lifted, at least for the cooperation with NATO.
Mr. Rabbi? You hear it? Looking from outside, and as you've been working with Serbia for quite some time and a while ago, do you see any progress in past like 2 decades? And do you see a chance that Serbia will ever join EU or NATO?
This is a very vague question. Obviously, there might be a chance. I think that somewhere Serbia is hostage of its internal political movements and politicians who will be the most pro-European politician if they can win the elections on that way, and they will be the most nationalistic and extreme right or left politicians if their interest in winning the elections will demand it. So and I just remember now when you were discussing about the relations to NATO, and now making the reference of what I said just now, that right after the war in the former Yugoslavia, when NATO started to offer some military cooperation, actually the Serbian, at that time, former Yugoslav Republic of Serbia, the military was absolutely keen after the war, where they were fighting NATO actually. They were very keen of developing cooperation because they said, wow, I mean, this is for us the standard we have to achieve. Yes, we should cooperate with NATO. And actually, I remember very well at that time that the politicians said, though they were much more Western oriented, or at least that they said, calm down, because, you know, internal politically, it's very difficult to sell it. That's very difficult to explain to people. And this is also a part, now going back to the communication and fake news, that actually in the communication, I mean, this is the psychology of people, that people are likely more accept information when it is consistent with the other messages that the person believes to be true. So practically already a kind of prejudice, already a kind of sentiment, which might be still from that time of the war, that influence very much what people believe as truth, or they believe, no, it is, I don't like it, I will not read it. So always what is their belief, and that is an information which confirms their belief, it seems to be much more credible. Now, again, when we are talking about integration, I would also warn you that okay, NATO integration, you might say, yes, it might be a more political act. NATO countries decide to invite Serbia. Serbia declares the wish to become a NATO member, and then the members of NATO will decide whether they want to invite Serbia or not. and that's relatively less precondition than with the EU accession. I was working sometime when Hungary was candidate to the EU on Hungary's EU accession. It's bloody complicated. It's very complex. And first, everybody saw that Hungary would join first EU and then NATO, but then NATO's integration happened earlier. It's indeed, I think it's much more a political decision, but is now the political atmosphere and the political conditions proper for joining NATO, for Serbia? I mean, if I look at the Serbian internal political scene, as well as the experience of NATO with some of the allied countries that might cause some blockage of the NATO decision-making process in very important issues like support of Ukraine or sanctions against Russia. Honestly, now when Serbia doesn't really join the sanctions and so on and so forth, so would NATO really want to have a country where there is a high risk to have another problematic country which would block the consensus? Because, you know, if in NATO there is no consensus, there is no decision, so the decision-making process can be totally blocked and NATO paralyzed. I'm not sure that at this time, when Russia became a very important problem for NATO countries, and in Serbia, actually, Russia has a totally different position, not only in government policies, but also in public opinion, that NATO would feel comfortable to integrate. But I'm not working now for NATO, so what I'm saying, this is my very private opinion. So maybe Barbara will say, "Oh my God, what is you talking about?" But this is my very private opinion, and I think that I'm not very far from the truth.
Actually, if I may just to say, I really love when former colleagues join these sort of debates because they can say whatever they want and think, and it's usually correct, which I wouldn't be able to say as a NATO official. So please keep inviting both former and current officials, so you have a full picture.
Thank you. And Igor would like to add.
Well, there are several elements there I would like to also outline. First and foremost is that I don't think that Serbia can join NATO without solving of the issue of Kosovo.
We can't join the EU without that.
And also the EU. This is the first challenge. Second thing is regarding the communication. I think even that this issue could be tackled in a different way. Zsolt said at the very beginning that NATO, and maybe we can discuss it afterwards, that NATO, that the military at the beginning, just right after the bombing, was really keen on cooperating with NATO. Actually, public support back then, just 2 years after bombing, was immensely more in favor of NATO than it is now. It was around 35% even before, I think in 2004. So what happened? So 4 years after bombing, we have, so the obvious answer is that we had years and years and years and years of propaganda of which actually started in 2007, and now we are where we are. The second thing there is also that I think that if there is a will, that this trend and everything could be reversed, but it also depends if there is a victory for the ruling elite that could be presented as such. And for example, I will just give you one small example, and that is the so-called 2020 Washington Agreement that officials of Belgrade and Pristina signed in the presence of the US with the US. Actually, these were unilateral obligations of both Belgrade and Pristina to the US, which were signed in the presence of then President Trump. Why I'm mentioning this? Because it was followed also by the radically different discourse about the cooperation with the US and NATO. And the immediate consequence was the rise of positive public perception of the US in the opinion polls. And obviously something like this could be done.
That was exactly my next question for you. I think there is a change of narrative, and that is what I would like to discuss, but you can add what you're planning after the.
Yeah, well, the Kosovo issue is actually very important. You can even argue that the Kosovo issue is the main reason why support for NATO membership is so low at the moment. Because if you look at, for example, these polls about EU and NATO membership from the beginning of 2000s, and there's a whole narrative then about Euro-Atlantic integration, so not European, but Euro-Atlantic integration, you can see that this support has started to become lower as the Kosovo issue resurfaced around 2005, 2006, with the new constitution being adopted, with discussions about the status, with under the UN, the dialogue in Vienna, etc., and then finally the independence of Kosovo in 2008, or declared independence that Serbia has seen it. So this is, I think, which opened this issue in terms of people still kind of seeing the 99 bombing as still ongoing, in terms of Kosovo not yet being resolved, and NATO and EU member states actively supporting Kosovo independence. So I think that the having Kosovo issue opened and being central for Serbian politics is precisely what lowers support for both EU and NATO membership. And also this creates this fertile ground for Russian or pro-Russian disinformation and all these anti-Western narratives we mentioned.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask is, I think there might be a change of narrative, or at least it seems like that. Whenever, like, President of Serbia is talking about the EU now, when they're opening the new highways, that they always mention the EU as a significant part of contribution to that. So I think, yeah, I think that is something that we haven't been able to hear back then. And do we think that that is the way to actually maybe change the polls that we discussed, and to change the opinion, because now it comes from the official source that is saying, so this is what we get from the EU. Because I think what people actually don't understand is what's in it for me. When we are discussing the EU integration is fine, but what's in it for me? So when we discuss this, do you think that it can help?
It is definitely not enough. It is important, but it's not enough for one simple reason. Well, actually two reasons. The first reason is that the Serbian government is playing, I would say, quite a critical game, where sometimes you hear the officials, the highest officials, saying one thing publicly in front of the Commission President, for example, praising the European Union, praising the assistance coming from the European Union. But on the other hand, you have pro-government media who are doing the dirty work, and they're at the same time writing headlines and front pages where the EU is the enemy, where NATO is trying to destroy Serbia, where there's constantly some kind of military threat against Serbia with NATO support and support of EU member states. So in that sense, like somebody is saying, thank you for the billion euros, isn't going to change much if you have this perpetual propaganda in the media, because this is it comes from the same source, but for different audiences. This is for the targeters from the West, and this is for the Serbian audiences who you have to show that you're a patriot and that they should rally with you against the evil West. And the second problem is that just focusing on the money is not going to help. Why? Because if on the one hand you have a narrative that the EU and the West in general is supporting you economically, giving you money, etc., and on the other hand you have a narrative that the same West is trying to kill you and trying to take away your territory and trying to destroy your identity, it's always the identity issues that are, let's say, more salient. They're more emotional. They're always going to be, dominant. So, like, if the people believe that the West is giving you money, but at the same time West really wants to destroy you, it's not going to help. you can promote the project as much as you want, but you have to tackle this, and this is this propaganda which is here for years, that the West is trying to destroy Serbia. And we have seen, for example, during the pandemic, when people were, let's say, really, they really cared about these kind of things, you had a whole campaign against the EU in the media, where there were headlines such as, the EU wants Serbs to die. And the EU, they want us to die, whereas China loves us and tries to help us.
And give them.
So in that sense, who cares about the real numbers of who has paid for the vaccines, who has paid for shipping to medical equipment, or who has paid for some other, measure in the pandemic? If the media have presented you a picture that one side literally wants you dead and destroyed, and the other side loves you and helps you because of their emotions towards you. And if you have these narratives strong in the media, some kind of promotion of projects or numbers or data, nobody cares.
Yeah, and we should not forget the mentality of Serbian people. We are not to be bought. We have a strong, proud mentality. Money is not the issue. We are not going to.
There is no money.
There is no money.
Yeah, that is exactly, Stefan, there is a question for you. So now, knowing all this, what is it that we can and that we must do to help switching the entire, is it even possible to change the picture that has been painted now? And how we can do that?
Well, the hardest question. I'm thinking about it all the time, from my perspective, because we are doing fact checking, but at the same time, we are telling some stories. And very often, not just when I read something that we published, like a few weeks ago or a few months ago, but I'm also trying to follow our colleagues, fact checkers from neighboring countries, from Serbia. Very often I have a feeling that our approach is a little bit too aggressive, that we are trying, to offer the truth, that we are behaving as a ministry of truth. So this is good and this is wrong. And now we are those people who are smart and well informed, and then we are going to tell you what is right and what is wrong when it comes to vaccines, when it comes to war in Ukraine, when it comes to foreign policy, etc. And I think that we have to change our approach a bit. I'm really trying, to illustrate our stories, to be, that you have a little bit of fun while reading it. We are doing some fact checking reports, so we are traveling, trying to do some interesting coverages. We are trying to do some interesting explainers, but it is not enough. I think that the whole fact checking community has a problem, and it is very often money oriented, I would say, because you are getting more money when you are publishing more fact checks. And some of them are, you have people, you have different newsrooms that are publishing fact checks related to clickbait, or something that is really, on a verge. Is it true? Yeah, is it necessary to publish something like that? And then
it's like tabloid approach to like discovering the truth.
Yeah.
yes, and yeah. I have a feeling that audience perceive our job, that they see that they are bombed with our fact check analysis. And I would like to, I don't have a general solution, but when it comes to fact checking, I think that it is really necessary to show them there is a real person, that I'm not a machine, I'm not an AI system funded by EU or United States. I'm a person who is trying to read, who is trying to understand, would like to talk about certain sensitive issues, would like to make space for different interpretations, not because, not because I believe that we have two truths in every single topic that we are covering, but because I think that we should be more, how to say, more open, more approachable. Yes.
Are you on TikTok?
Well,
Not
we
you
have,
like you, but Dragan.
yeah, we have our account, and that's why also wanted to mention when we had that massacre in a school in Belgrade, people were discussing a lot about realities. So children are not watching TV Pink or TV Happy, etc. But there is small portions of these realities are being published on TikTok constantly. Stories that you have on Put It Analo, they will not visit website or Instagram page of Put It Analo, but you have all the same stories, just made for social networks, made for TikTok. Some people out of those newsrooms will use that stories, and they will present it to younger audience. So I think when a single narrative, a single story, a single disinformation is published in the media, it is circulating on different levels, and it is getting to younger generations as well.
Question for you also, you can add yours, then I will otherwise. You can add.
Yes, I'm actually really pleased to hear your opinion because this is the rare type of opinion, and I really do share it. Nobody likes to be fooled and being stupid or actually called stupid because you share the type of information. Everybody likes to learn something, but not by saying you're stupid. You are sharing this information. You didn't do this the right way. You did a reverse photo, or that is the easiest type of it. And we are just bombing. And I actually completely agree with you, and that is a big problem. We have a problem on the fact checking side, fact checkers, and the information. So we have this huge issue, and all of us here are pretty good at tackling problems, but so many of us are good at tackling solutions to the problem. That is the problem also. So yes, and thank you for it, because I completely agree with you, and I'm trying to praise it, but I don't have the general problem solutions to that. So yeah.
Yeah, the question was, is it part of the solution to actually teach people how to find answers, how to, to make them feel smart, because they can actually see what is the truth and what is not. So I think media literacy education is essential.
Digital literacy, media literacy, algorithm literacy also, and maybe not finding the answers, but asking the questions also. Why? Maybe unpolitical correctness term that autistic point of ask everything and question everything, even your own judgment. Even in one of our previous panels, we have that how to fight your own stereotypes, how to find what is your stereotype on every question, or from vaccines to NATO to Kosovo to whatever, Israel, Hamas, whatever. So that,
we always search for information or like media, posts that are gonna, say that we are correct, what we were thinking in the first place. They just want us, it's like confirmation bias. That is always the issue.
But there is a problem there.
also,
Also because you have to motivate people to search for truth, to double check, and people are relatively lazy. Second thing is that a lot of people are simply, they simply do not know. And I think that there is the role of the government, that they should be the ones that should promote all of this. I mean,
we cannot really.
No. Maybe in Serbia, but there are some other states like for example, Finland, that they did that. They did the public campaign door to door about media literacy, about fact checking and everything else. The government did that. But here, what I want to say is, I heard older people now. I mean, with the cell phones, it became really much more challenging, because they are referring. I read it on the internet. I read it on Google. So they are referring to that source of information as some, well-established.
It was like, I've seen it on TV, so that's
Media.
fact checking.
So like they read it, I don't know, in some well-established media source like Vreme or someone else. This has to be true.
And the other problem, Vreme is mainly a magazine, which weekly magazine, they have a portal, yeah. But many
No,
people don't.
No, of course, we need some sort of a different strategy, and I think that the role actually of the state there is the key answer. I mean, I mean, in your case, you are doing fact checking, right? You are doing debunking. But then again, and this work is great, but you said you have a feeling that you're bombing people. Actually,
We are.
there is a need for a medium that will use your products and actually utilize it to really combat disinformation on the national level. So, you know, call it media or journalist association or some governmental body or something else. But
We cannot really count on the government to actually help us with the fact checking because they don't want to be fact checked by
maybe
themselves.
it will be in their interest
When?
or in certain
Yeah,
moments.
but what you said,
When
like,
they have a chance to present something as victor, when it will be in their interest to have a different kind of news. So I'm not just referring to this ruling elite. I'm referring to any ruling elite. We have a problem here that, you know, our governments are simply suffocating the public space with information because they are trying to prevent certain processes from happening.
and certain truths from coming out, right?
Yeah.
And when you said like young people are they always search for different truth. So that, I think that is where our strong point could be, is that we can actually approach young people and teach them how to search for the actual truth. So that is just, you know, as someone who's working with young people and in media. We are approaching to the end. I would like to just go around one circle to just, you know, sum up, so we can start with you, Nicola.
Yeah, just very briefly to touch upon the question of young people. First of all, I think in Serbia, we have a bigger problem with older people than younger people. Because I think younger people are a lot more tech savvy than older people. And older people are the ones who are actually spreading this information quite actively because they're the ones who actually believe that everything on the internet is already kind of fact checked, right? Because it's on the internet. Young people are more tech savvy. Of course, they're also open to this information, but I think any strategy on increasing media literacy cannot just stop on young people. It has to, you know, touch upon the whole society. And also the question, how are young people being informed? Yes, they're not reading Courier or any other tabloid. They're probably not reading any newspapers. They're probably not really reading any articles as such, but they are living in the same society where certain lies are said so many times they become true. So you don't have to read the tabloids to walk the street and see 10 front pages, out of which 9 are going to say that NATO or, you know, NATO with Albanians or NATO with Croats is trying to destroy Serbia. So you see it, like, and people around you are talking about it. Older people around you are talking about it. So it's on the TV, it's on the graffiti, it's everywhere. So we're talking about the whole system which is in place, which is not only about one particular message being sent, it's about the entire atmosphere in society, entire discourse is twisted, and we have to, you know, like, tackle it all together. And besides that, yes, I mean, we have touched upon so many things here. I believe on the one hand, we have a sort of problem which is global, which is the role of tech companies and algorithms. It is about disinformation as an issue, I think, on a global scale. But here, our local context, I think, has to do with our governments and the question of media freedom. And this is something that I believe we have to tackle because it has so much influence on civil democracy and of course on foreign policy orientation of the countries. And in that sense, you know, when we're talking about you know, this kind of problem of external influences, we always come down to issue of democracy in the end, and democratic institutions and the resilience of democratic institutions. And I think this has to be the focus of every discourse about disinformation.
Maybe I should have just mentioned that the whole result of this propaganda or whatever influence in the end, that people are getting desensitized completely. They don't care. Not just maybe the old people, maybe they care for the youngsters, maybe, but the youngsters don't care. So why would they fact check anything? They just don't care, and that is the main issue I find. that is very difficult to, how to make them care, how to make them read what we need them to read, how. That is the question I ask myself all the time.
Well, we receive like tens of thousands of messages each day, and by the end of the day, we can only memorize 2 of them.
As a marketing expert,
Yes.
yes.
So
yes, that
that's
is true, yeah.
We actually have to find the answer to how to become one of those
Yeah.
2, you know.
It actually gets to them.
Yes. So
Just
that's
get people,
like
yeah.
storytelling, everything is that, but
yeah.
how to tell a story that is really relevant.
That is just my underlying issue. We have tackled from politics to digital stuff to whatever
And then
media.
not to have that elitist approach, as you mentioned, that
That
to
is
make
really important,
people
yeah.
feel, you know, like they are not. So I would like to, you know, for a closing circle to like just wrap up a little bit.
Well, yesterday I spent almost the whole day, by reading the essays of my students because I work at the Faculty of Philosophy, Department of Media Studies. And, it took me far more time than I expected because a few years ago, I was able, you know, to go through it, to see the storytelling. It's a science journalism, course. And to see if everything is okay and to see, to use the software to check whether something is plagiarized. But nowadays with AI, it's far more complicated and I'm getting more and more cynical. Even if something is well written, I have this feeling, oh, this could be something, you know, made by AI. This is a problem that we will have in years to come because when it comes to all these programs, media literacy programs, just like 2 years ago, we were able to show some softwares, photo and video forensics, etc., to show some strategies in order to verify text articles, etc. But nowadays, it's getting almost impossible to discern what is right and what is wrong. And I have a bad feeling about it because I don't see a way for that to be stopped. Of course, in parallel, we are getting those AI softwares. In parallel, we are getting softwares which are fighting against AI or you know, software that should be aimed to debunk AI content. But this progress is really slow, and I'm really afraid that we will have a nightmare when it comes to media literacy issues and the issue of trust.
I mean, those programs are not 100% effective, or that is the truth.
Igor, would you like to wrap up before I
Well,
give word to Zsolt and Barbara?
Actually, I will stop here. I have something to say, but I think it's too radical, so I will.
Okay.
I'll
That's in the.
Yeah, I'll skip it and leave the floor for
Okay, thank
Zsolt
you.
and Barbara.
So Zsolt, would you like to share some wrap up thoughts for this session? And then to give word to Barbara to, as we started with her, we can also, you know, finish this.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that the main issues I wanted to say, I said. I do not have anything much more. But I could talk about it a very long time, but I think that the major issues I already said. It's a very difficult situation, not only in Serbia, but elsewhere as well. Serbia and the Western Balkans has a very specific position with the recent history. Yeah, I wish you good luck with your work to try to debunk the fake news.
That sounds optimistic.
I read one interesting analysis from Rand Corporation where they said that probably it is not so much the issue always to try to correct the fake information, but we should rather concentrate our efforts on the consequences. I mean, to repair the damage or to try to counterbalance the consequences of the fake news. But that would require another long discussion. thank you very much for the invitation, and that was a very interesting discussion, and I was really happy to listen at your opinions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Also very interesting for me. I think there's a lot of takeaways that I would probably need to think about a little bit more, but I think 2 or 3 points from my side that I also share with my colleagues here. One, I think what is important perhaps is to compartmentalize the different approaches. So one is how you deal with the media and independence of media. But the second then is about, for example, how you deal with young people directly. If you say that they might perceive differently things, they might need maybe emotional storytelling about, let's say, their future or something else, and how they maybe also want to be part of something bigger and actively contribute. That I usually find works quite well with young people. They don't want to be just told what to do or have the feeling of lectured. And particularly now, I think we have a whole new generation of young people who are very active and they want to be activists, whether it's on climate change, whether it's on anything else. So I think if we can mobilize them into something more active, again, this is my experience of the last couple of years talking with really young people from all around the world, but I'm sure the young Serbian people would be the same. So compartmentalize and see if you can have dedicated projects or smaller discussions on each of these different points, because otherwise we are tackling a really big issue with so many different angles. And thirdly, I think the last what was mentioned was about the technology, and I think that's a really very important topic, and in fact a very scary one, at least for me, because the consequences of AI are going to be far-reaching. And I feel we are not really prepared to, we will be just talking about it, we will be complaining about it, how our adversaries are using the AI. But I think we should be already now proactively thinking how we can use the AI to our benefit, rather than spend a lot of time talking about, oh, how horrible it will be once the AI really gets out there and will start supporting all the algorithms and everything else. So maybe reverse psychology of what the AI can actually do for us to help us in our work. So maybe just these 3 points. And other than that, was very nice seeing you, at least remotely, and to reconnect again.
Thank you, everyone. I think it was very important points were shared today, and I'm sure we are going to talk again in a year or two, and then I hope that we will actually have some, progress to discuss about from today and especially from the year. Thank you.